Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. We are off and running with what I hope will be a good show on the Monday morning after the Super Bowl. Let me give you the rundown. Back at home, did the show last night reacting to the Super Bowl. Adnan Virk at ESPN has been fired for leaking information. We know that because ESPN has been leaking the information that he has been fired. My crown has been usurped. Jeff Bezos was in Roger Goodell's box. Sweet. Sounds a little bit odd to say Roger Goodell's box. And I got to say several things that I want to get to, but I want to start with this. Did you guys say, I know we didn't do Woke Wednesday, so I may have to write about this more fully, but did you guys see what was put out by the Daily Beast on Saturday, I believe it was, the day before the Super Bowl? This was wild. I couldn't believe that I saw it. I said to myself, this is utterly insane. This can't be real life, all right? And it was this quote that was out basically saying that, and this is wild, that everything... this is the headline. The headline from the Daily Beast website, and you can see it a little bit, and I'll read it to you. Their star quarterback, coach, and owner all supported Trump, but that's not the only thing that makes the Patriots the preferred team of white nationalists. I mean, this is a ludicrous argument, even for people who are in woke media, arguing that the Patriots are hugely supported by white nationalists is out of control. Of course, the irony is the majority of their team is black, and the guy who just won the MVP, Julian Edelman, is Jewish and became the first ever Jewish player to win the Super Bowl MVP. I got to say this. I honestly, in this era of diversity and inclusion, when every time there's any story at all that is remotely new, it's like, oh, this person is the first transgender beauty pageant contender. Okay. Well, that's a lead story somewhere for like days on end. Oh, it's a transgender beauty pageant. All right. More power to you, whatever. Not the person I would vote for to win a beauty pageant, since you're not the sex of most people in the beauty pageant, but whatever. Like, you could be eligible, I guess. I'm actually thinking that the first Jewish Super Bowl MVP is actually being underplayed. Like, that seems like kind of a big deal. There's been a lot of Super Bowls, and it would seem to me to be a pretty big deal that the first ever Jewish guy won the Super Bowl MVP. But I don't know. We spend so much time talking about the Rams male cheerleader as if it were an unbelievable accomplishment. The Titans had male cheerleaders 20 years ago. I don't understand that at all. All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl. Bunch of different things I want to dive into about the Super Bowl still as we unpack day one after the Super Bowl. I got to give credit to New Orleans. New Orleans people say boycotts don't work. People say, oh, you may say you're not going to watch, but in reality, you were actually lying. No, New Orleans wasn't lying. New Orleans Super Bowl rating dropped by 50% this year, over 50% this year, as opposed to last year. So everybody out there who was a Saints fan and said, I'm not even going to watch the Super Bowl, most of the time people like me would say, well, yeah, whatever, you're definitely going to watch the Super Bowl. I got to give credit to New Orleans, to how many Saints fans just decided not to watch the Super Bowl. That's a high level of petty, but I kind of respect that, because we hear all the time, oh, boycotts don't work. Boom, over half the people who watched the Super Bowl last year did not watch this year. And that is pretty wild. They had Mardi Gras parties instead. They did all sorts of different things instead of actually watching the Super Bowl. I bet this is the biggest drop in ratings history for a city that wasn't in the Super Bowl the year before. In other words, last year, if your city was in the Super Bowl, you would expect that the ratings would drop quite a bit the next year if your city wasn't in the Super Bowl. But the Saints haven't been in the Super Bowl for 2 straight years. I bet this has never happened before. I bet there has never been a city as united. That means one of every two Saints fans didn't just say, more than one of every two Saints fans didn't just say, oh, I'm not going to watch. They actually didn't watch. And I got to give credit to people of New Orleans for pulling that off. I think that we weren't just cheated. Saints fans weren't just cheated. I think the entirety of football was cheated because there was no way that Jarod Goff was ready for primetime. You may not like Drew Brees, although I don't know how you could dislike him, but there's no way Drew Brees would have performed as poorly as Jarod Goff did in that game last night. Drew Brees would have shown up. He couldn't have been confused by the defense that Bill Belichick put out in front of him. He would have performed much better than what Jarod Goff did, and as a result, we would have seen a lot better game. I don't think there's any doubt at all. That was an awful game. 10-year ratings low. I think people made the decision not to watch, and as a result, I think that the awful product that was out there was an ugly game, and I got to give credit to Saints fans for not watching. So that was pretty outstanding. I think the question is still out there about Jarod Goff, and I said this on my show. In the last 40 years, there has only been one quarterback who has lost his first Super Bowl and come back to win a Super Bowl later, and that's John Elway. Think about that for a minute. You always hear people say, oh, it's Cam Newton. Oh, it's Matt Ryan. Oh, they'll be back and they'll be able to win again. If you go all the way back to 40 years ago, 2 generations of NFL football, Super Bowls, the only guy to lose his first Super Bowl and then come back to win it later is John Elway. Everybody else pretty much wins their first Super Bowl, whether it's Brady, whether it's Manning, whether it's Roethlisberger, whether it's Russell Wilson. All of those guys won the first time they got into the Super Bowl. Now, they might have lost in playoffs before then, but when they actually got to the Super Bowl, they went and won at a high level. They won the first Super Bowl. They kicked the door down. I think what that reflects is the pressure that comes if you don't win it. I think a lot of times there's a Super Bowl hangover. I think we've seen that to a certain extent with the Falcons. I think we certainly have seen it with other teams before. Think about all the guys who came really close to winning the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan, Falcons lose in overtime. Not sure Matt Ryan's ever going to win a Super Bowl. Cam Newton wins the MVP, plays in a tight game. I'm not sure Cam Newton's ever going to win a Super Bowl. Steve McNair comes within a yard of winning a Super Bowl for the Tennessee Titans. I'm not sure that Steve McNair was ever going to win a Super Bowl, but he never got in the Super Bowl again. It's hard to get to the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Jarod Goff is young. He's probably going to win again. If he does, he'll be the first quarterback to come back from losing the first game he ever played in the Super Bowl and winning one later since John Elway. I think psychologically, being on the big stage and failing is a lot more debilitating than we give credit for from the quarterback position. I think a lot of quarterbacks, when they lose that big game, they lose an edge, they have a hangover, and it takes a long time to get back there again. I'm not sure that Jarod Goff ever gets back there again because you're so close at that point in time. When you fail to win the Super Bowl, it's a debilitating blow, the likes of which very few things in sports consist of. All right, I want to get into this Adnan Virk story. Adnan Virk was fired by ESPN for reportedly leaking information about Baseball Tonight being canceled. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but Baseball Tonight evidently not going to be on ESPN anymore or something like that. I don't know. I don't watch Baseball Tonight. I'm not even sure how often it's on now. But there's a report that Adnan Virk leaked information to Awful Announcing, that ESPN was upset because they recognized that the story that went up on Awful Announcing was almost verbatim what was said in that conversation. And then as a result, Adnan Virk was not only fired, he was forced to immediately leave the campus on Friday. ESPN dropped this report right before kickoff of the Super Bowl. So ESPN, which leaks information all the time to media, was upset that Adnan Virk had also leaked information to media. Now, let me say this off the top. I have always said I don't leak information for other people to write. By and large, if I am going to say it, I just flat out say it, right? And there's a lot of stuff, if I'm not willing to say publicly, that I just keep to myself. But I have always done and been the source for whatever stories that I write. I put my own name on it. I legitimately am telling you this right now. I don't believe I have ever been an anonymous source for any article that was ever written. Ever. I either write it myself or I don't hand it off to somebody else. I don't think I've ever been an anonymous source. Having said that, a lot of people saying, oh, you know what, Clay, I bet you talked to Adnan Virk because he was leaking information about internal things at ESPN. No, I wouldn't tell you who I talked to in the first place, but I've never talked to Adnan Virk in my entire life. I've never met him. I think this entire story is crazy. I think it's crazy that ESPN is in the process of leaking all sorts of information about Adnan Virk while they are firing him for leaking himself. Now, I don't like anonymous sources, but if you get a bunch of anonymous sources all lined up together and they all agree that something is happening, then I do think it's worthwhile to write, and I don't think that there was anything at all wrong with Adnan Virk leaking that information about Baseball Tonight. I think why was he leaking that information? Usually information gets leaked because somebody benefits by it going public. And usually, I always enjoy playing this game. Usually you can figure out who benefits from a leak by just pulling the thread and trying to figure out who the source is for a leak. And I think Adnan Virk was probably trying to keep Baseball Tonight from being canceled. And as a result, he was trying to get that information out there so that other people would rise up and complain about the cancellation of Baseball Tonight. That's my guess. Now, if I had that opinion, would just write, hey, I don't think Baseball Tonight should get canceled. And I don't particularly care about that show one way or the other. But I do think it's intriguing that Adnan Virk is getting fired over this when really ESPN leaks all the time. And ultimately, we're in the business of media, and ESPN is in the business of publishing other people's leaks all the time. Look at the Anthony Davis story. Almost nothing in the Anthony Davis story would be public if it were not for leaks coming out, right? Think about all of the LeBron free agency drama. It's all leaks. Reporters are in the business of talking to people and getting leaked information. So I think it's ironic that ESPN, which is entire editorial department, is predicated on publishing leaks and having off-the-record conversations and having anonymous discourse, is now outraged that somebody at ESPN is leaking elsewhere. In other words, I don't see ESPN conducting investigations into all the leaked information that they're getting, which is allowing them to have more content to talk about. And I also don't think it's being talked about enough from a hypocritical perspective that ESPN is going after Adnan Virk for leaking while they leak their own information about why they fired him. So they are judging someone for doing something that they themselves are doing. And if you question whether ESPN was who leaked this information, they did it an hour before kickoff for the Super Bowl, which is PR 101. They hoped the story would just go underground and nobody would pay attention to it because they leaked it out right before the Super Bowl. Now, unfortunately for ESPN, Super Bowl was kind of boring, and this story to me was a lot more interesting and intriguing than anything that we saw earlier on that show. All right, any questions about Adnan Virk? Reports are now that Adnan Virk might be suing ESPN because he has got multi-years left on his contract and because he did not get any kind of payout when they fired him. ESPN is arguing that he violated the terms of his contract, Adnan Virk likely arguing that he did not have anything at issue at all. All right. So I think this is going to be an intriguing story to follow. I will answer any legal questions you guys might have about this story. Do I think he'll be blacklisted? No. I don't think that Adnan Virk will be blacklisted. So I think there's a good chance that he'll be hired by somebody, maybe DAZN for their new baseball spin-around show, maybe some opportunity to have work elsewhere. But I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a major story going forward. Maybe MLB Network. Again, he's advocating for Major League Baseball. I don't think there's any reason to be upset about that with him. All right. A lot of people, to me, leak information on a regular basis. That's literally what we're in the job of. And so I don't see anything wrong with the way that story played out. Personally, I don't see anything that Adnan Virk did wrong. All right, this is unbelievable to me. I don't know how many of you followed my prop bet lead when I said that they were going to mention the age discrepancy between Tom Brady and Jarod Goff. Then not only did they mention the age discrepancy, they did an entire segment called hashtag 17 years ago or whatever else it was, right? And as a result, they ended up showing Tom Brady and Jarod Goff. Jarod Goff was shown as a 5-year-old. This was an unquestioned lead win, undoubtedly a win, right? And it was early in the game, first quarter. I said cha-ching, I tweeted it out. My crown is being usurped because the Supreme Court of lock-it-in judges has decided that that didn't count as a mention, which is wild to me. I wrote about this on Outkick, but imagine this, okay? Take it outside the world of sports. If there was a wedding and a man was 17 years older than the woman he was marrying, and the best man got up to make a speech, and the best man said, here's a picture of the bride and groom's mom and dad now and 17 years ago, right? And then on top of that, he had said, and here is a picture of the groom's mom and dad now and 17 years ago. And then he had shown the groom 17 years ago and the groom now. And then he had said, and here's a little bit of a catch, what if it was the groom's second wedding? And then he had shown a picture of the bride now, and he had shown her 17 years ago, and he had said as part of his best man speech, she was in kindergarten. First of all, the woman might well kill him, right? But is there any doubt that if the best man then argued, to the woman getting married, I didn't mention to you, I just showed a picture of you when you were 5 years old and pointed out that 17 years ago you were in kindergarten. I didn't specifically mention that you were 17 years younger. I didn't mention that. Is there any way possible that anyone out there would be like, oh yeah, he didn't mention the age difference at all? This is a slam dunk. I am being totally screwed here. It is worse than what happened with the O.J. Simpson verdict. It is worse than the Rams call that kept the Saints out of the Super Bowl. I am your rightful lock-it-in king, and my crown is being taken unjustly. There is no defending this situation at all. I am going to raise holy hell this afternoon live on FS1 over my being taken, my title being taken. I don't want to say the fix is in, but the fix is in the jurors are completely allied against me. That was as definitive of a mention of age difference as has ever existed in the history of age mentions on television. This is an absolute travesty of gambling justice. There is no way to defend it in any way. I am being absolutely railroaded here. Inexcusable, indefensible, no way to in any way defend what is happening and being done with our weekly prize on Lock It In. All right, finally, it's important. Jeff Bezos was in Roger Goodell's suite at the game last night. Two different interesting aspects of Jeff Bezos being in Roger Goodell's suite last night. One, the first thing I thought when I saw this, Jeff Bezos, obviously the owner of Amazon, for some of you out there who are Neanderthals and idiots. First thing I thought was the NFL has to make a decision about NFL Sunday Ticket with DirecTV and whether or not they're going to extend that deal. Is it possible that Jeff Bezos is going to buy the NFL Sunday Ticket package for Amazon, and that Amazon would then offer the NFL Sunday Ticket as a part of your Amazon Prime subscription? That is my hope. That is what I would love to see. I would love it if you were able to watch any game on the NFL Sunday Ticket as long as you had Amazon Prime. I think that could be wildly popular. I think it would be insanely good move for the NFL. And Amazon could probably pay more than DirecTV is paying. Okay? I like the NFL's DirecTV Sunday Ticket package. I just don't think it makes sense to have it be only on DirecTV, okay? Other option. There are three options I'll give you. Option two is that he potentially is interested in buying the Seattle Seahawks because Paul Allen has died, and that the NFL loves the idea of Jeff Bezos buying the Seattle Seahawks because of his overall power in the new media universe. That could make a lot of sense. Option three is the least interesting, which is just because they are out there advertising for the Washington Post, and probably, did Amazon have any ads during the Super Bowl? I don't know. But I know the Washington Post had an ad. Option three is just that Bezos was there because he spent $5.2 million on an ad that aired during the NFL. So I think there are three options. The biggest impact for why he would be there would be NFL Sunday Ticket. The NFL has the right to end their exclusivity with DirecTV, and they could theoretically move it to Amazon. I think that would be a big story. The second most interesting, I think, would be that Jeff Bezos is trying to make a move to buy the Seattle Seahawks in the wake of Paul Allen's death. And the third and least interesting is just because they bought a bunch of ads on the Super Bowl and Roger Goodell wants to interact with Jeff Bezos. So I think that is a really interesting story to follow. If you are at all interested in sports media and business, some tea leaves there. They had to know how significant it was going to be to get him on television inside that booth. I also don't believe that CBS would have shown Jeff Bezos in Roger Goodell's booth unless the commissioner was okay with having Jeff Bezos be shown inside of his suite. I think that was a message of some sort. What kind of message, I'm not sure. Those are my three hypotheses that are out there. Our award for the most woke ad goes to Toyota. They found a girl who was given a scholarship to an NAIA school and argued that one day she was going to be in the NFL. That is a ludicrous, laughably absurd argument. This girl who is barely playing in the NAIA being used as an example in a Toyota ad was, I thought, our winner for the wokest Super Bowl ad. It was desperate to argue that one day women are going to play in the Super Bowl, even if that is never going to happen. The NAIA is not even as high of a level of football as like 4A in the state of Texas or Florida or California. It's really, really low level. I think that this is ridiculous. Sometimes you need to tell people when they have no chance to play in the NFL. This girl is 5'5" and weighs 137 pounds. Guess what? You are not going to play in the NFL. Doesn't mean you can't have dreams. Doesn't mean you can't have aspirations. But reality needs to intercede at some point. If you are a 5'5" non-starting cornerback on an NAIA football team, you are not going to play in the NFL. You need to go professional in something else. Sorry for not believing in her as the next Deion Sanders. It's good to have dreams. It's also good to have realistic dreams and people out there who tell you when your dream has got to come to an end. Find another job. Maybe her job can be to be the woke star of all these different woke media companies and their woke ads. Because Toyota, of all the people you could put in an ad, you want to know how not high-level sports she's playing? The NAIA doesn't even prohibit student athletes from appearing in television commercials because none of them ever do. Because nobody knows who any NAIA football players are. This is a desperate attempt to be as woke as possible. Chase whatever dream you have, but you are not going to go pro, whoever that girl is who was in that ad. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I would encourage you to go download the podcast and make sure that you don't miss us on Facebook and on Twitter. This has been Outkick the Show, and we are going to have I'm going to talk about Virginia tomorrow. I can't believe how crazy it's gotten in the state of Virginia with the Democratic governor, Democratic lieutenant governor. If you're not paying attention to this story, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow when the Super Bowl's over. But somehow the governor has got a KKK photo on his medical school yearbook page, which is unbelievable. And also the lieutenant governor has been accused of sexual assault at the 2004 Democratic convention. So it's possible that both of those guys could end up losing their job and the governorship could go all the way to the attorney general. It's unbelievable how insane this is. My name is Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. There's nothing that's bad in my yearbooks. I'm ready to be elected to the Senate from Tennessee. I'm happy to roll with whatever's in my yearbook. Thank you all for watching this show. This has been Outkick the Show. Kisses. This is Outkick the coverage. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.